Okay, 3 o'clock. Good afternoon, Mayor. Since you're the only one there, notice is hereby given. The City Council, City of Alpine, Texas will hold a workshop at 3 p.m. and regular meeting at 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, July 20th, 2021 at City Council Chambers at 803 West Holland Avenue and via Zoom conference in the City of Alpine, Texas. Meeting login details may be found at www.cityofalpine.com. This notice is posted pursuant to the Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 551.043 Texas Government Code. Members of the audience will be provided an opportunity to address the council on any agenda item after determination of the quorum and proof of notice of the meeting. Zoom meeting guidelines and procedures may be found at the city website. Remarks will be limited. There's no. Okay, the city website will be limited to total of, and I can barely read that, minutes per person. Please give them, please. No, it's not that. It's just that it's so faded out that I can't. And yeah, maybe the glasses would help. Anyway, you will be given 3 minutes and you will address at the mic your name and residence and name and address listed for the person or in-person attendance. When addressing the council, please introduce yourself by first and last name and state the ward in which you reside in or have a business interest in. For public comments by virtual attendance, please email your name and the ward that you reside in or have business interest in. For public comments made by virtual attendants, please email your name to the meeting moderator at g.calderon@ci.alpine.tx.us. If you do not live or own property in the city, please state that in your email. You have a petition or other information pertaining to your subject. Please email it to the city secretary beforehand at city.secretary@ci.alpine.tx.us. State law generally prohibits the council from discussing or taking any action on any issue not included on the agenda, but if appropriate, the council may schedule a topic for future discussion or refer the matter to staff. No personal attacks on council members or city staff will be allowed. The mayor or city council members may call a point of order to stop personal attacks at a meeting or disruption. If an individual continues to personally attack an elected official or staff member in a meeting, they may be barred. Call this meeting to order. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mayor, we do have a quorum. Councilor Rodriguez has an excused absence. Councilor Johnson also has an excused absence, and the rest of the members are present. The notice was posted on July 16th at 2:30 p.m.
Okay, so we're gonna have a pledge. Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Thank you. And do we have any public comments? I guess not, because we don't have.
We actually have Dr. Longra. He wanted to make a comment on a couple of the budget items.
Okay.
That's for the regular meeting. That's for the regular meeting.
You want to do it? Okay, sounds good.
But if I have more time now, I can do that now. But
Either way,
We don't-
it'll be 3 minutes.
Okay. Alrighty, and we have a workshop, a budget workshop.
Honorable Mayor and Council. See if I can get this there we go. So we are making some big transitions. I do apologize. We're trying to take this budget a slightly different direction. The first thing that I wanted to do, instead of this being part of a regular meeting, which it had been done in the past, I wanted council to have a real opportunity to discuss all of the concerns, the issues, to give not only the city manager, but departments some direction and what the goals are. Each department has already completed their portion of the budget. They've established what they've accomplished this year and what they would like to accomplish next year. I wanted the feedback from council before giving you them their requests and their wishes, as you are the legislative body, to come kind of have that before conversation with, okay, this is what we're truly looking at. Back in June, I did send out a budget survey. I'm gonna give myself props. For the first time, we had almost all of the city council members and mayor respond. There was only one who did not. I think that's really important, especially as you guys start working more and more together, to understand that all this information is important, not only to how whoever is the city manager, but how departments run their departments in the city as well. So it provides kind of the clue as to what you guys are looking for, because you're out there day to day with the constituents. You get the phone calls, because I can promise right here, I send them your way. You know, there are issues and concerns that you need to be aware of that only you can address, i.e. approval of a budget, change in ordinances, policies. That is your primary role. So we kind of put the citizens forefront with you guys so that you can provide us that feedback. So actually kind of want to give you how we run the budget this year. So there is a process in how we do the budget, and I know our former mayor here, our only participation, is aware of it. Every person who's come in does it slightly different. Over the time period I've been here, it's been the city manager's responsibility. It's dictated in the charter. I've worked with each of the departments. I've given them kind of, you know, hey, what have you done? What do you want to do? What do you need to do your job? I really wanted to do a hands-on experiment with you guys and make something difficult for you to understand why their jobs are difficult. Because when you request a department, I need you to pave 100 roads, but their equipment can't even get past 3 because it has to be 1 fixed. The parts are no longer available. They have to be special ordered. The equipment has to be relocated to a city that can even fix it. It slows down their process. So it's not that any of your one team doesn't want to do their job. They just don't have all the tools to do their job. You have a eager group of individuals who want to accomplish things, but their hands are tied behind their back because I don't have access to that software. I don't have a computer that I have to, you know, punch every time it goes down because it's so outdated. The little things that make it. So I had that conversation with every department with, what do you need? What do you want to accomplish? Not necessarily what would make your job easier, because your job will never be easy. Local government, public government, at any level, it's not an easy job. You're here to represent a whole community. So they had some really good conversations. They came back with some really good feedback, and I have all that, and I will present it the next go around. But I wanted to kind of give them the understanding of, you know what, let's look at what you need to do your job, see what council wants to represent the city as a whole, and how can we have a level playing field. We know that our wish list never matches what we have in revenue. It's always going to be like that until we develop and plan appropriately to move forward. So with that being said, back to our budget survey. This is a very
the one we filled out.
Yes. This is a very valuable piece of information because it's your opportunity to not only present to the public, but to have this group discussion as a whole, you know, what is important, what needs to be done. So I provided a different structure altogether. There was a few questions, and then there was kind of, these are the top 10 things the city really needs to look at. And then of course, you know, what else would you like to discuss? So I took all of your surveys, and the first question was the top 3 to 5 expectations. Across the board, without any like slight variance, is paving. Your biggest concern is paving. Very understandable. It is the first thing people see. It's the last thing people see. It's what they drive on. It's what they cuss at. It's what they have to detour because of a pothole. It's very visible. The second item of 3 to 5 expectations was preventive maintenance. I think this is also a very valid piece of information that you guys provided, because we don't maintain it, whether it's our tools in our trucks or it's the buildings we're currently sitting in. We don't have a proper maintenance program. We do the best that we can with what resources we have available. There's nothing that says we can't do a little bit better, plan a little bit more. So that's kind of, the focus moving forward. Of course, keep taxes low. Nobody wants to raise taxes, totally understandable. From a financial perspective, I do kind of cringe because it is one of your biggest revenue sources. So it is something that has to be taken into consideration. To provide incentives to get business in Alpine. So this is your economic development. You have properties, you have, for rent, for sale, these are, if people get into them, businesses established, you get more hot funds, you get more sales tax, you get more property tax. It all affects the city as a whole. And then of course, the big one is promote tourism. After the past 1.5 years, the city surprisingly has done well. I mean, I watch national news, I watch other cities, other states, and they suffered. They hit bottom, they cut all sources available, and it was a huge impact for them. We've been lucky. We maintain the best mutual agreement with all the businesses, the conditions, the CDC, the PEMS, everything, to ensure that we could at least try to provide the safety. We provided the guidance, and then we kept our tourism at an even level. Could we have done a lot better? Of course. If we had been open 100%, we wouldn't be having this discussion. The other question was non-departmental expenses. This is your support for your public library, your family crisis center, your children's advocacy. And you probably have maybe 30 other nonprofits who've come to you at some point and said, hey, can the city provide us? This is a very detailed item because you have to take into consideration the city's representation on their boards, what the money is being utilized for. This is taxpayers' money that you'd be providing them. So there are some guidelines. As you can see, yes, continue funding. Yes, continue funding. It was across the board. Everyone was definitely on board with continuing where we're at. Maybe we do look into others as they come up. But, and Mayor, I'm going to give you this one. It's important to the well-being of the city. This is our ability to help other nonprofits who provide services that the city does not provide directly. Your family crisis center, your children's advocacy, and your public library. They're not asking for you to fully fund them. They're asking for the assistance.
Are these the ones that have always been provided?
These are the ones who have always been provided. There has been ups and downs. When you have change in management, you have change in structure. You have change in who gets provided for, what's the legalities of it. Can we do it? Can we not do it? So one year they weren't, other years they were. Nothing was budgeted, but then it was put back in the budget. It varies. The Family Crisis Center does have a 3-year contract. We're coming up on their 3rd year, I believe. And then of course, the Alpine Public Library does do a yearly contract with us as well. The Alpine Public Library has some things coming up that they'd like the city assistance on. I have spoken with Don and told him I think it's beneficial for him to come and speak before council, kind of come up with a game plan. Is this something that would benefit the city as a whole? So we're looking forward to that conversation. Emergency services. So this one is very broad. It encompasses everything. The big things coming up would be your ambulance service contract that is about to expire. Working with the county. Mr. Sandate made the comment about, our city team members should assist to perform duties of emergency management in coordination with the county and the city. I think that's honestly the truth. They're your ones who are out there on the field. They're your front forerunners. Prime example today, we had Randy Guzman directing traffic for an accident that was right here in this corner. I stepped away. I didn't have my protective gear on. I didn't want to get written up with myself after I preach about it. But to have that understanding with you have departments who, no matter what's going on, will be in connection with an emergency.
You have individuals in
Yes.
these departments.
Yes.
And that's why, because that's Randy and he's going to stop what he's doing and go help.
And
That's what we want.
and you need that because like I said, I was
Absolutely.
out there helping. My biggest fear was you have 18-wheelers, you have heavy traffic. This is a state highway. Me and my little old hand is not gonna stop someone who does not want to stop. So I'm glad that you have these individuals who step up, but we need to intertwine them with our emergency process, with working with the different other agencies to understand that when you have an emergency, call Randy, call Chief, call Johnny, call whoever, because most of these guys, one, it's an adrenaline rush, I believe. They want to be out there and they want to help.
Oh, they love it, yes.
I mean, they're right there. And of course, working with the county with the written agreement. Because we do have interlocal agreements currently in place, it's time to maybe review them, look at it from Judy's different direction, but just look at things from, okay, we need to look at the big picture, not the small picture. However these interlocal agreements came up with, or if it was a verbal handshake, or however it worked, we need to work together.
How many do we have interlocal agreements?
Um,
Different, with people in this area?
For emergency purposes?
Yes.
One, that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So we have an emergency plan that is established by the COG, and it
Right.
does dictate who is responsible at which level, city, county.
Got it.
We have one interlocal agreement with the county and the fire department. I don't quite understand that one as far as it was, we took over the assets and that side of it, but the actual functioning of the department, it is a volunteer department. So it's not like we can ideally tell them what to do.
Right.
We can assist them financially. So review it, have that conversation, sit down and say, okay, we need to make changes. How do we want to move forward? My favorite, and you know I'm gonna grant, it's not free money, but it's money that assists us in what we want to accomplish. I think it's important to continue to apply for grants to keep taxes lower. This was brought up by multiple of you. Utilizing for needed equipment to help successful street programs. Definitely agree with it. There's ways we can purchase large heavy equipment with a little assistance from the USDA, from the CDBG grants, from any other source. It's much needed. Part of my presentation later will actually go into a little bit more on the grants. There just needs to be a little bit more structure to it. I think the city needs to evaluate what we need to apply for instead of applying for everything and hoping we get something. It makes it a little bit harder, especially on the management side of it, when you have a bunch of random grants coming in that maybe, yes, it helps a certain area, but is it helping the overall need of the city? And these are your answers, guys. Just put all together. So this was the fun part. And I even had my own little cheat sheet for this. So, you know me in numbers. So I took all of your ratings, put it into a master sheet, and then averaged it. So 10 was the lowest priority and 1 was the highest priority. So I'm going to go in order of how they are. And then once I'm done, I have a whole bunch of thoughts and discussion that I hope we can have. So believe it or not, ad valorem tax did not rate the lowest. Of course, it's our property tax rates. One of the primary sources of revenue for the general fund. In the past, the city has not increased the rate. This is where it gets really touchy with individuals and citizens and the education of it. The city has not raised the tax. The city has gone with either the base tax line, which effective tax rate, sorry, it's been a long day, the effective tax rate. So this is the tax rate that is set to provide exactly what we basically provided the year before. Now, yes, sometimes it's higher than what our actual proposed tax rate was the year before. But this is the minimum you can do absolutely nothing and obtain exactly what you had before. The city does have the choice of increasing. Nobody wants to increase taxes, understandable. Appraisal value goes up, we actually get more tax on the effective tax rate level. Not significant, it's usually 17 to 24,000. It's a little something, it's a salary if you want to justify it. The city also has the option though. The state did pass regulations on the tax rate. There's no longer the availability to go up to at least an 8% increase without having to go for a vote. The city cannot go higher than 3%, but because the city has not raised taxes, we can take the prior year's percentages and apply it to the current year and increase at a higher rate. Am I suggesting that? No. Can I tell you what we're going to bring in today? No. The certified tax roll doesn't actually come out until July 25th, fingers crossed. Once we get that, we can kind of see what has been appraised at what values and where we stand. It is a big project for the appraisal district and the tax office. They work really hard to try to get it to us sooner. We get kind of a peek sneak early. It does look like a huge increase on the appraised value side, but the past few weeks they've been going through all the contested cases.
$80 million.
So just take that off of our list, and that's non-tax there. So it's hard because you can't really make a decision. Your budget also has to be approved prior to the approval of the tax rate, which is smart on the state level because it allows you to approve your budget, but not focus on that tax rate being your primary level. So if you have a big budget, well, I'm gonna just have big taxes. Well, no, they prevent that from happening. So it's only at a 6, so halfway through there. Capital asset maintenance and purchase. This goes back to, of course, do we maintain our capital assets? Do we have a purchase program? You know, a full understanding. And I understand that all prior city managers, probably before I was born, have all tried to focus and work on this. It's not easy when you have a small community who it's hard, things change. Your staffing changes, your leadership changes, the direction you want to go changes. You know, at some point, do we just want to say, you know what, I give up, we're going to have dirt roads? No, obviously not. But there's always something changing that makes this harder. It's rated 7, 8, 9 because 3 of them all rated exactly the same. So this is one of them that rated. My department finance is still working on the assets. We're cleaning them up. I've determined we cannot find that garbage truck from 1979. It's on our assets. We don't own it. It's gone. But we have others like that. And it's one of those, I have to feel comfortable that I've done my due diligence before I come to council and have it removed. It's no longer an asset. We own an ambulance too, by the way, guys.
There's an old Suburban too out front.
Yes.
Yes.
We own quite a bit. And this is
I know
just
somebody
the
that wants
thing.
a Suburban.
And there are people in the public who have reached
want
out
this
multiple
stuff.
times and
Yes.
want this. And we do have a little bit of a hoarding problem. We have departments who know that they're not going to get something new or updated or fixed. So they hold on to an asset and then they use it for parts. So that makes it hard because they've updated that 50-plus-year-old tractor to the point where parts aren't even made anymore. We were lucky, we got a USDA grant, the city paid for half, USDA paid for the other half, and they got something more than what they had expected. That's the direction I'm hoping the city takes. Economic development. Of course, as the city continues to grow, council may want to determine what investment you want in a growing economy. This one is very hard. It's working with all different entities. It's working with taxes. Do we want to offer tax incentives? The city does have these capabilities. We can create TIFs. We can create all different kinds of incentives. This actually ranks number 3. And I think it kind of tied with the tourism in some ways, because I think when you look at it, tourism is a big economic development in our area. You want people to come in, but you need those businesses for them to come in. So this one ranks number 3. Information technology. This is one of the 3 that tied. Everything is changing with IT. It is becoming harder and harder to keep up with. I'm guilty. I'm dealing with Wi-Fi issues at my own home. I thought I was smarter than the router. Apparently I am not. And it's hard. So the big thing that came across my desk is the president has issued an executive order to improve the nation's cybersecurity. You hear it on a regular basis that people are getting hit. I say we're lucky because we're in a bubble. Nobody intentionally comes to Alpine with, oh, I'm going to break into accounting software. But they read the front page news and like, well, I'm not gonna touch them. But it's having that, okay, how do we prevent something like this happening? We currently operate off of more than 30 different software programs citywide. We're not connected to one software. Is that a benefit? It definitely is, because you don't know which one you're gonna get into. Is it a downfall? Yes, because it makes the job harder to communicate with all the departments. You see it with our utility billing, our finance, our courts, we're all different. So it ranks 7, 8, 9. It's something down the road that the city should take into consideration, either implementing a contract with someone who handles IT, providing an additional IT resource, whether it be an employee, whether it be, like I said, a contract, or just an education base. We are required by state law to provide cybersecurity training to all of our employees. And we do have a deadline to complete that. And Lorena has done it 2 years in a row, so we are in compliance. I don't know how much employees truly understand what it means. Your little handheld device that everyone has, most of them are city issued, those can get hacked as well. So it's just having that friendly reminder that, information, even though we are public, we are transparent, we want it all out there, I really don't want someone coming in and writing checks off my system. That's just me. We try to prevent. Any questions? I'm gonna go through these fast so y'all can have a great conversation. Okay, debt.
Still with you.
Yeah.
So debt is a big one.
Dad, I understand.
And I really need the council to understand the severity of our wastewater treatment plant. Me being the interim utility director, Jess Washington, had a conversation the other night about 6:30. I thought she was gonna cry. I was scared for her because since I've been with the city since 2013, everyone who's come in has applied a different thought process to how this treatment plant should work. That's fine. Everyone's an expert in their field. My biggest concern and her biggest concern is yes, you have issues, but everyone who's come in has not wanted to take on that work. Your wastewater treatment plant is on the last leg. I foresee TCU coming in and just saying you're done. You cannot manage.
Megan, I'm being told by people who seem to know everything, that there was money set aside for this, and their question is, where is that money?
So in 2019, during my short vacation, I was made aware that $300,000 was moved aside to purchase a belt press and a bar screen. The belt press is in place. I can't tell you if it functions properly for the plant in which we have. The bar screen has yet to be implemented. The aerator has been addressed 4 different ways, 4 different fails. The aerator that runs the master racetrack is your biggest issue right now. It is a $1.4 million project. I'm in a lucky position as I handle the finance and I'm doing the interim. I've signed off on the task order to move forward with getting that operational so that we don't lose one and not have the other. It's a win. When this falls apart, we're trying to not let that happen. We're moving forward with the aerators. We have a contracted engineer who's been working with the city. I've had nothing but positive comments come back from them. I've met with them once, phone conversation, laid out the concerns. They came back with this is the plan. We can do this. This isn't going to happen overnight. It's become my new mantra. It's going to get fixed, just not overnight. We work on the aerators. We work on the bar screen. The bar screen is important for those of you guys who don't know the flow of the wastewater. Everything that comes into the plant gets filtered through this bar screen. Currently, they're doing it manually. So basically, they're having to lift it up. They're having to clean off all of the bigger items. By the way, it's amazing what people flush down the toilet. I am amazed.
I may never flush my toilet.
Hey, we've had inmate uniforms, we've had teddy bears, we've had toy trucks. I don't see the concept of how it gets through the toilet, but it happens. So this is something that they're having to do regularly in addition
How
to
regularly?
maintaining. I would say probably 3 to 4 times a day.
Oh,
in
really?
addition to everything else. And I could be speaking wrong. The few times that I've been out there, I've noticed when they do it and they find money, which is the coolest thing. Of course, I want to go touch it. And they're like, no, they put it out to dry and then they sanitize it and, but it's become a regular thing because the more and more you have going through your system, the more it has to be cleaned out. You don't want those big things in your racetrack.
Got it.
They won't break down. You have bugs in your racetrack. When the bugs are upset, the racetrack starts to fail. So then it affects your clarifiers. Your clarifiers are currently of a big concern. It's been approved and authorized for them to bring in a third party to actually drain out all of that gunk. Well, we know what it is. The heavier solids that have basically, you think about a 20-foot hole in the ground is completely full. And these are what's made it out of your racetrack bin. So it's getting those out. Every time you have a hiccup, you have a setback. You have 2 employees who run that plant. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They run it from first thing in the morning to last thing at night. When there's an emergency, they have to respond when they're out there. They're scared. I mean, I may be speaking on their behalf and being correct, but I would be scared if I knew I had a license and I'm trying to obtain a license, but there's all these issues and are they going to be addressed? So yes, there is a game plan in place. It won't happen overnight. It will be a big investment over time. Debt may be our end result. Texas Water Development Board offers programs that provide financial assistance. They are your better options because they have lower interest rates. Some of them have a grant option as well, where you get so much in grant and so much in loan. So you're not repaying the grant, but you're repaying the loan.
Right now, we haven't addressed it.
We are this.
You are addressing.
So the aerator is already being addressed. The bar screen is being addressed. The engineers have come up with a plan. It just, they want it all done at once.
I know.
And it could happen, yes. If we were San Antonio, we were Dallas, and we were Pecos, Texas, and had a windfall of money, yes, we could address it. We're gonna take the responsible way. We're gonna address the biggest to the smallest concern, hoping that
And
as
they
we go
told y'all
along,
what this is. They told you, this is A, and this is B, and this is C, and we can start with A.
yes, your biggest thing right now is the aerators. So yes, money was put aside.
Okay.
Was it used for what maybe it should have been used for? I can't answer that. Has this been an ongoing issue? Yes. We've had issues with the whole drying process. That's where the large solids come out and they have to be dried before they're disposed of. We've got drying beds out there that were put in with the actual development of that new racetrack in that. They've been modified and changed so where they don't meet standards. We can't use them. We have an old racetrack that we could use as a holding, but we've taken it off our permit, so we can't. We've got clarifiers that need to be addressed. There's a process and there's a lot of issues. Everyone who's come in has had a different, are they wrong? No, not a single one of them has been wrong. It just, how did the director move it forward to get it done? And I think that's where the issue's always been. So now you guys get to know all the dirty laundry, literally.
That's fine, because this needs to be fixed.
This is your other biggest concern, of course, is your water. You have infrastructure that needs to be replaced. You have a department who works in a fire environment. You're always putting out a fire. You're not doing any preventative. It's fire, 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 fire. They will always be like that until someone comes in, whether it's a contractor, whether it's 50 new employees who take sections of town and start replacing, updating. Your downside to that is you have to do it in correspondence with the payment. If you don't, you're going to be in the same situation you are now. Prime example, June and 6th.
Mhm.
They tore up 2 sections of road for tap assessments after it was still coated. Beautiful road, lasted less than a week. Working together, which is part of my other presentation tonight.
Just can't wait.
I know.
And I know that, I had some people contact me about them obtaining water samples and how courteous all the employees were. I mean, I had a lot of compliments about the employees and the way they conducted themselves.
You truly have a great team. Brothers and sisters, I'm not gonna lie to you, we have fights. Got a couple of them going on now, but that's okay. At the end of the day, you have departments, teams that want to do it. They just need to feel reassured that if a project gets started, it gets finished. And that's the hard thing. And a lot of people I know, it's like, oh, well, there's no money. From a finance perspective, it hasn't been about the money. It's been about how you procure it. Make sure you follow the state laws and the process. Does it take additional time? Yes. At the end of the day, I am not going to go to jail for anyone, and neither are any of my team members. I mean, we want you to follow the law, that's all. And if we bypass a few little policies within our own, system, that's fine. At the end of the day, it's that state law. You have to procure correctly. But the state provides loopholes for that. Let us help you with the loopholes, but then it usually becomes a brotherly, sisterly fight and something happens. We're bypassing that. And the other item is your ordinance updates and fee structures. So I am going to move forward during this next few months with a few ordinances that do need to be updated. So your building official, this is how he operates. He operates off of your ordinances. If your ordinance says you cannot have a red pole in your front yard, he is going to come tell you you cannot have a red pole, even if you've had it for 40 years. A lot of our ordinances are outdated. They're not incorrect. They just need to be worded differently and be compliant with the state regulations. They're working hard. You've seen the little red things around town that says, unsafe structure. You've probably had a few phone calls. Yes, there is a guidance, like what do we need to look at? What do we need to focus on? But they're doing exactly what council has set up years and years of doing. You just now have someone who's like, okay, I'm going to do it door to door. Let's go. Whereas before it's like, maybe I'll do it later. Of course, this weather has been very gracious to us. We've got high weeds all over town. Our own buildings have high weeds, and that has to be addressed. So these are things that need to be updated. The key to this is also that fee structure. We do charge certain fees for permits, for violations of not having permits, violations of codes. It all ties together with our court process. Starting to update these, yes, it's an additional revenue source, but it's not what brings in your sole revenue for the city. You don't want to overlook what you've already established. You just want to make it more compliant, more visible. Go ahead.
I don't like to fine the citizens who already pay taxes because their weeds were too tall to finance the city. I don't think that's right. I don't think if somebody's going 26 and 25, we ought to fine them because there's a taxpayer that is already putting into this system.
These
There's
are
a better way.
discussions that need to be had.
Well, and I understand too, as far as some of the, in my ward, I've been looking around and I've noticed a lot of cleanup. And I know that, they've issued warnings first. I mean, they talk to them and they issue the warnings, and usually it gets cleaned up rather quickly. I have seen a lot of things cleaned up in my ward.
Don't underestimate your citizens. They want to know, if they know.
Yeah.
And when I first moved to Alpine, I put my couch in the dumpster. I didn't know.
Well, of course you did.
But it's just an education. I'm calling myself out here, guys. It's an education process. Coming from a big city to a small city, the rules are different. And you do have a lot of people moving into Alpine. Our numbers may not be increasing, but the demographics are changing. You have people from bigger cities, like, oh, well, we can do this in Austin, Houston, Dallas, Montana, California, wherever they're coming from. But it's having this, okay, do we start a huge education campaign? Will everyone listen? No, but at least we're trying. Maybe there are some fees. I get a kick out of looking up the laws that are still on the books about, you can't carry an ice cream in your back pocket. We have stuff like that maybe needs to be addressed. And one way to do that would be to look at our ordinances and start updating them. You're having to also take into consideration all the state changes as well. Every time legislation meets, they give you presents. They basically either confirm that what you're doing is correct, or we're going to start making it harder. We're going to increase what you guys are required to do. We're gonna cut back on things. We're gonna change the current rules and regulations. Those all trickle down to the local communities without the funding. So they're gonna tell you this is what needs to be done. We're gonna start implementing it, but there's no funding. It's a cost to us as a city and to our citizens in order to be in compliance with state laws. We need to just balance it out to make sure we're in compliance with the state side. It's a safety thing too. I mean, some of it, it's hard because you know why they're doing it. You have someone who's old school, they have 16 tires on the roof because one, it keeps the roof down. We've seen them blow off during windstorms. Two, it keeps the noise down. Is it in our ordinance to allow that? No. So it gets brought up, it gets questioned. So right now it's the 789, it's one of those ties, but it is something piece by piece by piece as the legislative body needs to be addressed. It gives great, transparency to the community. Not only is it on our website, but this is how we're changing it and why. Paving, number one. I don't think I really need to discuss that one. It's important, and you guys have that was across the board. No one varied on that one whatsoever. Reserves broke my heart. Number 10, the bottom of the barrel. Yes, reserves.
All those big words in there.
It's very hard. Reserves are money put aside for emergencies and shortfalls. This is money that is literally separated out of our normal operations and our day-to-day checking accounts and put aside for when we have an aerator that goes out, you're not struggling to find the money, it's there. This is an ongoing, since I've been here, the city has done its ups and downs with finances. No one's perfect. We're doing a lot better. I think over time we'll build our reserves. When I started, $564 in reserves, we now have almost $2 million. It is a huge difference.
Well, leave it alone.
You've got to spend it. That's the business side. You got to spend it to make it. There are things that will need to be rescinded from ordinance perspective for how money was secured for specific projects to open up those reserves more for your wastewater treatment plan. The water department wastewater has close to 800,000, but several 100,000 of it, about 500 is specific to items. Those items have either been completed under day-to-day operating or just are no longer a priority. Your big priority is that wastewater treatment.
So that money can be moved and put towards.
Yes. The other good thing that's not on here, we have a reserve account that is specifically for one of our bonds. It's our 2003 reserve. I'm going to call Reiner out here. I believe he was on the council when that one went through. It is at the end of its life. We have completed the last payment as of next month. So that reserves, it's a little over 100,000 is money that's freed up that will go towards that improvement. You have options to use it within that department, not within the city. Of course, my recommendation will be a strong push towards the wastewater treatment plant. Helps them out. So those are the big things that you kind of ranked. One big item was your paving. The second big item was your staffing. And I wanted to include some thoughts of my own before we jump into it. And I really would like to throw out all your ideas, how you foresee moving into the next year. So I did a little digging on my own and I asked every department director or supervisor, what was one item they
My
could have
first question is, do you honestly think we can see this? Because I can't. All right. Yeah, look at there.
So I asked all of them, just a random question and it shook them kind of like, okay, what is she doing? What is one thing they need to do their job? So we're no longer in the what if scenario when it comes to natural disasters, to emergencies. We've had them multiple times in the past 5 years. Your water department was beyond lucky to obtain generators to keep your water system flowing during the freeze. We are one of very few in the communities in this area that did not do a boil notice. There was never once a stop in the flow of water because they jumped and they ran to another city and borrowed generators. Well, we rented them. We got there before other cities, otherwise we would have been in those cities' boats. The biggest and only concern they've all come back with, literally, it's not gonna let me shrink, is generators. So when I reached out, gas department wants a generator, animal control, a generator, police department, a generator, streets, a generator.
They don't have generators right now. Really?
The police department has a generator for their building to run dispatch.
Yes.
When we talked, the initial was to have equipped vehicles to be able to handle running around in this weather. That's a day-to-day operation. We talked about it. We have a game plan for that. But if you have an emergency like we have had, you can't bring up the Civic Center in any capacity. There's no way to do it if we lose electricity. You'll have residents who need oxygen. The city can't provide that support without scrounging. And we do. We literally went through every department and personal use ones and got those little generators so people could keep the oxygen going. Your water department does not have the capability to handle the larger generators.
How many did it take when
They rented 2. So they keep them at your 2 biggest pumping areas.
Okay.
And ideally, that's all you need is 2. They're mobile, they're on trailers, and you move them to where they need to go. The wastewater treatment plant does have a generator. This is required by TCEQ standards.
Of course.
But it needs to be maintained. It needs to be looked at. The wiring to it has been changed multiple times. Warren Cat does come out and maintenance it to a minimum. They basically do what would be necessary, but we can't promise you an emergency.
It's a bare minimum, yes.
Street department, when we had the outage and the freeze and no one had electricity, neither did your gas stations. And a lot of gas stations were going through their gas fast to keep emergency vehicles supplied. We have a facility out at the yard that has the big diesel and unleaded. Yes, it is color coded or marked to be used for certain things. And an emergency, I don't foresee that being an issue. I could be wrong. Everyone would need to double check it. But to have a generator to keep the fuel going so that city vehicles can be maintained, ambulances, fire trucks, police vehicles, your workers. Randy's lucky. We lucked out with the gas guys. I mean, we didn't get gouged like Martha did because they were on, other issues. But to have a generator that can run a gas system, it is unique. It is not the same. So that was their biggest concern, is just generators. There are programs. We could reach out to the Texas Department of Emergency Management, the USDA. We could look for other grants. My concern is if we continue to wait for that pot of money, you're not solving the issue. So the city should just invest. Go ahead and even if it's just 2 big on-trailer generators that get shared amongst the departments to start off with, until maybe we get additional funding. But this was the biggest thing, and it didn't take but 2 seconds for people to respond. Generator. Some of them even gave me an explanation why, but literally it was a one answer generator.
Megan, had they not raised prices of generators after all that last year, knowing that all little towns like us are gonna want them?
So generators have,
Just my opinion.
everything's raised in price.
Fine.
Everything. We bite the bullet. Do we pay more? Yes. But we have options because we are a government. One, we have to procure it correctly. We can go through buy boards
Right.
that provide discounts that, provide the assistance we need. I had sent an email with the USDA. What programs do they have? Is it a 50-50? If we want to buy X generator and it's going to cost 30,000, are they willing to spend 15 and we spend 15? I'll say 15,000 any day.
So for 30,000, we buy 2 big generators?
That's it.
Really?
But it's
And when we
fine.
rented them, how much did y'all pay to rent them?
I think it was about 5,000 a week.
Really?
It was 2,500.
Bye. Dr. Ron go buy us too. We buy us too.
He's gonna walk out of the room again.
Instead of parts,
He's like behind him.
instead of the parts, Doctor,
Yeah,
why is the generator?
hell with those trees.
So this is kind of one of my, I'm looking at what tools could we have in place to reduce the unnecessary stress on departments when emergency happens? Do I want there to be?
If
an
a
emergency?
generator makes him happy, let's buy him a generator. Okay.
I just don't, I don't want to be in the emergency again. I was lucky. I stayed at home. I worked from home. I had no electricity. I had a fireplace.
Well, I'm not even gonna talk to you because
Yeah.
I'm on the hospital and I
There was-
never lost electricity.
There was plenty.
I didn't tell
of people
anybody.
who didn't have the same benefits.
I didn't.
And it's hard, and
I would say y'all can come to my house, but I don't know. My dog had to lie to you.
But you know, on the generators, I had recommended for, you know, like this freezer we had to bring folks into the Civic Center. And, oh, we got generators, not a problem. But then all of a sudden, all the generators are sent to the wells and two failed. So we had a useless Civic Center. I had recommended, and I've recommended several times, that we invest in a couple of generators to power the city and the Civic Center. And these be run by natural gas because propane will freeze. And this way we can accommodate probably about 150, 200 folks in here that were without power. We have the facilities, the restrooms and whatnot. And compared to the fire station with very limited on your space. Yeah, they have the facilities, but they don't have enough space for the number of people. And this whole section of town had been out for like 4 days. Fine, okay, mine was 4.5, it started Sunday. Mine started Sunday, but luckily I had friends that invited me to their house and whatnot. But I think the city needs to prepare. Number one, let's get the generators for the wells. We gotta have the water. You know, a lot of the larger towns, Buda, Kyle, all those by Austin, they lost all their water. And they were without water for some time. And then when it came on, they couldn't drink it because contaminated. Yeah, so I highly recommend that we do invest in those generators any way we can, you know, as long as we can stay within our means. Water department and the Civic Center to have those.
Well, I second that.
I did go to the firehouse to get warm. So.
Did you?
I did.
But also, you know, you know, and you hit it right on the nail, prioritize the wastewater treatment plant. You know, we've gone through a couple of city managers on it, and let's take care of the problem for right now. We need a game plan overall. What's, you know, it might cost a little bit of money, but in the long run, what did we save?
If we set a plan in place, it can't be made, even if none of us were here, to be kept up.
there have been plans put in place. I don't know how council's complete involvement has been in it. My thought process is to fine tune what the current contracted engineers are doing on behalf of the city. Present it to council with book. This is your bottom line. This is where we're
Right.
going for this. We'll scrounge, we'll save pennies. But step 1, step 2, step 3. And they've looked at it from a step process. It's gotta be phases.
I know.
I mean, all the employees would love, you know what, just tear it all down and build a new one.
Sounds great.
It does, not a problem. There's more to that.
Money.
You have permits in place, you have a facility in place. There's nothing wrong with the facility except for you've had very little maintenance long-term on it. And this does not include our current employees at all, but you've had employees in the past who were out there who kind of did what they wanted. And it's documented. It's very evident that the leadership and the guidance may not have been there. You have employees right now who've worked at other facilities who know that, hey, we need to really look at this. But I feel like it's partly my job to be like, okay, I don't want you to be scared every time you come to work because you're going to get there and the whole system is going to be down. I want them to know that, okay, you've got,
That we've taken step 1.
yes.
And I'm glad that, we've got engineers now that are looking at it and coming up with a game plan. Because a few years ago, electric motors were ordered. And I happened to go out there to check it out.
Did you see them
They-
sitting there?
Huh?
Do you see them sitting there?
No.
I don't think they've moved.
No, they're still sitting there. And
We had bought
the,
equipment, but it.
yeah,
not
the
hooked
bolt,
up.
the bolting pattern did not match up with the existing one. And you could not sit there and drill holes because you would damage the integrity of the structure.
So can we not sell that to somebody
Well,
who buys?
They
it?
tried, but they were used or outdated. We got them on, they were rebuilt and sitting in some
It's like
city,
a
I don't know
mini
where.
Shoe sale and you just keep it whether.
Yeah, well, and that's what-
Okay.
And
The
that's
city-
what happened.
The
And
city has invested probably 250,000 in Band-Aids.
Really?
The Band-Aid has now been ripped off and it's hanging by that one hair that hurts.
Well, let's
And
buy
it's gotta
a
be done.
and I think that some of the
Band-Aid.
citizens will agree with us, is that waste treatment plant needs a large overhaul. And, it's gonna cost money again, I hate to say that, but we do have to have it repaired, otherwise we'll be paying the fines on top of maintaining it or trying to rebuild it. So,
And TCQ has always worked with the city. We will get fined. I mean, I don't see a way around it. But they've allowed us to take on the SEPs, which are the special projects, to try and repair what is broken. I think we don't wait for that. We just move forward and we do it. We know that they're gonna come back. We're not gonna pass an inspection. We're gonna have problems. We are publicly.
I
admitting
don't,
we
I
have
don't think
issues.
everybody in this town, because I'm telling you, I've worked at the county for 20 years and until I ran for election, I never heard about this. I wouldn't have had a clue this was happening. So I'm not the only one that can't even know this is happening out there in this little town. A lot of people don't know about this. When you talk about raising the tax, if somebody comes to me and said, do you either want your wastewater or would you like to pay a little bit more taxes? Well, I'm gonna go, hey, I'll pay a little bit more if that's where that money is going. If you allocate it out there and it goes, I'll pay.
So you're very lucky because property tax does not get allocated to Fayetteville. It is under its own fund and it's the revenue collected from your water, wastewater bills. It's a whole different pot of money.
Look
Yeah.
at there.
and people don't think about the waste treatment plant, 'cause as long as they flush that toilet and it works, we're happy.
I think about it daily.
And
because
I do too, because I've been going out there, I had been going to visit.
I'm gonna run it outside.
Yeah. You'll have to take a trip over there.
I'm good, thanks.
I mean, it's not,
I've got the whole general idea.
and
We have to go in there cleaning the screen.
yeah, and the two guys that are there, I mean, they're super
That's
good
amazing.
employees, what they have to go
Can any
through.
of this money, if we ever came up with, could we not get a part-time person to go help them?
So part of the budget and some of the recommendations coming from departments.
What happens if
is
these
that-
guys got the COVID? What if they had both gotten sick? What would we do? Megan knows how to do it. You going out there, Megan?
I'd love to.
I'd love to.
Add to my list of things I've learned while in the city.
Be great on a resume. What would we do?
There are other employees who do assist and back up. They're just not as knowledgeable. So
Okay.
they
Okay, so
they-
somebody else
they
can.
complete the basics,
Got it.
but you don't want the basics done moving forward. You need someone out there who can just.
That's, where we need to compliment our employees, because even during this ice storm we had, they all worked as one team. And, I saw them out there and stuff, and I stopped by, thanked them for being out there, 'cause I used to work in that environment also, so I know what it's like. But everybody, they weren't complaining other than, yes, it was cold, but they were all together helping one another out. I don't care what, gas, water, or the street department. They were all as one team, which is what we need.
It is very important. So, by the way, that's a big item you guys need to. The other thought was, because you guys discussed paving across the board, the city could continue working with vendors to provide the additional paving support to our current street program. So the city did get a street study done. There is a list of priorities of streets that need to be fixed. Jarrett Dirtwork was contracted. He is out there right now. He does a complete rebuild and which allows the street department to do a complete seal coat. So you're doing both ends. They're doing the preventative to keep the streets going for another 5-10 years, while the repave is basically starting from the ground up again, giving it the 20+ year lifespan. Our weather does not like our roads. Rain, heat, it affects it. They crack, we get potholes, traffic, we have accidents that tear them up. We have utilities that come in and tear them up. I'm thinking from a long-term perspective is to have that regular vendor contact, end up with a contract that allows someone else to assist our street department. Your street department is currently down 2 men in addition to a distributor. So they are not moving as fast with the seal coat project because they are missing one of their main items that they use, the main piece of equipment. Is it being repaired? Yes. Is it something that we could do here? No. So it's bringing in someone to actually make those repairs to get it back up and running. Eddie and his team do an awesome job despite the public is your hardest critic. They're out there, they're in the heat. When it rains, you do see them trying to do little odds and ends around town because they can't pave. We've had
They did mow.
They do.
I'm sorry.
Did you see? They mowed.
Yes, I did.
They jump on and do all the little things. But the other thing to understand with this department is, and I'm guilty of it prior to anything, when I first started here, hey, Eddie, can you come change my light bulb? Hey, Eddie, can you come? Eddie has always been the go-to guy. He's the one that kind of gets things going with all the utility, all the building, the maintenance side of it. Every time we pull him away and his team away to do something that we need done, it makes it harder for them to get back onto what they're trying to do. So staffing is a concern. Whether we piecemeal some of his day-to-day stuff and contract it out, or we develop a bigger team for him so that he has your building maintenance. We do have 2 people in that position right now. One has been out for several months due to personal injury. The other one, he's new, he's trying, poor thing, we pull him in 50 directions. But to develop a true maintenance, where they come and they actually maintain the building. They put the cover back on, the lights above your head. You know, when light bulbs need to go out, you know, if something breaks or if there's something that's unsafe, tear it down and get it out of the way. It's something that needs to be discussed as well. But if you've got a vendor in, you contracted yearly, bi-yearly, that, hey, we're gonna have a paving program where we seal coat, fog seal on our end, they completely rebuild on their end, you'll have all these roads back up in 5 to 10 years. It's not overnight.
Oh, no. I know.
But you'll start seeing the improvements. You'll have less, and this will no longer be number 1 on your priority list for like the 7th year in a row.
How much is contracted out on the paving or rehab?
Currently with Jarrett Dirt Work, this year's contract is, or this portion is $872,000.
And what's the budget for materials and seal coat, asphalt and
You'd have to ask.
aggregate?
300 and something thousand. I could stop sharing my screen and look it up for you. Give me 2 seconds. Your grant or your contract is more than what's budgeted for the others. And this is a continuation of the contract that was signed in 2019, or yeah. That awkward moment of silence.
We're just waiting with bated
You
breath
should.
to see what you say.
But that is a very valid question. What we budgeted Oh, no, I was wrong. It's 400,000. What we budgeted for the city portion of improvements is 400,000. What we budgeted for the contract is 831,694. But the contract that was amended and signed in November of 2020, this fiscal year, was, I want to say 872,000.
Now, we have, Jared is the only one we have on board right now, correct?
Yes,
And-
we are very limited, and this is
Yeah.
where you have the hardest decisions to make. We can be lucky and hope that there's a contractor in the area that will pick up because they're working off of a TechStop project. For a contractor to come into Alpine from another city to mobilize and come down here, double the contract, double the price.
Yeah. and-
Because now they're paying room and board, meals, mobilization is more expensive, and the materials are still all being brought in. Lance Jarrett has a bit of a lucky streak because he does have a caliche pit, or base, so he can get the base on his own. He's not having to contract out.
How about the aggregate company that's out here on 118 North? I thought that they had been talked to and they said they would give us a discount or we don't have to haul it from, I think it was Van Horn or Sierra Blanca
When
one.
the city went out for bid, because we go out for bid for that, because we try to bid large quantities so that it's not a
Or actually
per
store it.
load. When we went out to bid, we did not get any response the first time from anyone. The second time for road materials, we called anyone and everyone we can think of, from Aragon, Job, CSA Materials. And I'm learning that there's new ones out there. I learned that Mr. Kincaid apparently has a couple, I don't know if they're called caliche pits, but that's what I call them, where that material can be utilized. So, you know, his name's in the back of my mind, so that next year when we go out, we personally contact them at this point.
Right, because they're local and the cost of hauling with the fuel prices, jumping sky high.
We are also competing with the state of Texas. So when the state of Texas gets those lovely grants and then they get these huge projects, these vendors shut down and only serve TxDOT.
And that's what happened when we first started paving, was that everyone was tied up with the petroleum industry, or TxDOT started their major overhaul on the highways.
And they're still.
Yeah, and they're still working, as you can see by the trucks out on 6790 east of us. In the evenings, you got all these employees that are there, their trucks and all that. So, but they're contracted to TxDOT.
Yes. So when you get a big state contract, we become the little Peabodys. Yes, it's a significant money to us. Just based off of our budget, but to them, it's more work for them to fulfill our smaller loads than working just solely get TxDOT taken care of. Or Halliburton. They're big ones. So every year it would have to be that evaluation with, okay, this is our procurement process. This is who we're going to go out and ask for. 9 out of 10 times, Jarrett may be the only one who responds. But at the same time, we may be lucky and we grab someone who's in town doing another project. That's like, you know what? They can do this in their slate. We'll just have them. But for the city to make major improvements with a shorter time window, you really want to look at the outside vendor. You want to look at, do we contract part of it and keep part of it in-house? If you refocus everything back into the street department, you remember they are also limited on their resources, their equipment, their staffing. So the added pressure for them to compete with someone like Jarrett who comes in, he does pay his employees slightly better. They just come in and they tear it up, they pave it, and they move out. So that is one of my thoughts. The next one, and I'm pretty sure, hanging myself on this one. Your most valuable asset, and I will preach this probably till I retire, is your employees. They're the ones who make the day-to-day operations go. They're the ones who take the brunt of the negativity, the positivity. They're just your face of the city. The reason why I didn't give you numbers right off the hand, because this is of vital importance to the budget. It is the majority of your expenses, your employees. My recommendation moving forward would be to do a 5% across the board for your non-exempt employees. This is your hourly day-to-day employees out there, and a 3% for your exempt employees, and those are your directors. They are paid a little bit higher than your hourly. I'm an exempt employee. Do I want to, oh yeah, 3%. I understand, but I'm also a supervisor who understands my employees who work hourly, who put in the time and the effort. I see the guys in the water, the street department. It's important for them to understand that they are valued.
What they get last year?
I honestly can't answer that. There
Oh,
was
good.
a 3% across the board. Last fiscal year has been very different in regards to pay salaries, pay scale, merit, promotion, demotion, wage adjustments. I'm a numbers person. I look at it from a numbers perspective. As a regular person who lives in this community and is an employee, I look at it as, okay, why are they getting a 15% increase and this person's not? It's very hard in the finance department, especially when it comes to payroll. We try to stay as neutral as possible. The past year, there was a lot of changes with the pay. That's just what happened. You can't go back and you can't take it away. My recommendation is the 5% and 3% across the board, but no additional pay until the development of a pay ladder for all future merit raises and promotions. There has to be structure to this. One of the things I've mentioned prior is the lack of consistency, and it's not just within the public. If we cannot be consistent and clear with the direction, the education, the process, if we don't do that with our employees, you're not going to have a team who works together. Pay is public. We're brothers and sisters, we talk. I mean, that's all there is to it. You have departments who are underpaid compared to other departments. It could be looked at from well, what are their responsibilities? What is the danger in their positions? And that's understandable if it's consistent. There has been lack of consistency that has created a little bit of internal turmoil that can all be addressed and fixed. I want to make the gesture that, we're going to make this one time, but moving forward, you have a ladder to know where you go. If I get promoted and maybe it's an actual promotion up, that I'm going to get a 2% because now I'm in a different position. If I, am just moving across, maybe I don't get a raise, or maybe I get a differential. We have so many options and they have changed since 2014, 16, 18, and 20. Employees, including me, do not know what is what because our employee manual has changed. Well, this department was allowed to do it, but this department is not allowed to. That's just the issue at hand. It can be fixed. I can't fix it overnight. None of the departments can fix it overnight. They are all learning and addressing, hey, wait a minute, how do we want to value our employees, but we want to value them and understand that they're all valuable. It may not be at the same, but the process is the same. So that's kind of my recommendation. It is a big increase. It could have a big impact where at some point we do have to back down and we don't get to offer this. But I'd like to start with your biggest expense being your employees. It's not just their hourly rate that's affected. It's also your federal income. It's also your retirement. It's your FICA. Everything else plays in it as well. So yes, we're going to give them this huge increase, but it affects the budget because there's other aspects to it that are based off of these increases.
And the ladder is, I've said that forever because I came from that environment where we had a ladder for our wages. But then you also need to explain to the employees that your health insurance you add that to your wage. So you're not making, say hypothetically, $10 an hour. You're probably making 15 to 18 because of your health insurance and there's other factors. And
So-
I think if employees are educated in that, then they can understand. But the latter is what I've always preached.
So Gio has seen my hard work. I actually had a salary compensation worksheet at the time for every employee. It takes what you make an hour and provides all the benefits, vacation, sick leave, holiday. Those are all benefits that are an expense that you don't think about. Well, yeah, I get 18 holidays, I get, 40 hours or 80 hours a year in vacation and sick leave. Those all are values to your bottom line. We also included COVID. I mean, we had employees who were out that were paid that they didn't lose vacation or sick leave, and it's not their fault. It has nothing to do with that. But this is something that says, okay, you're a $13.50 an hour employee. At the end of the day, after you take everything into consideration, you're now a $21.50 employee. And it's hard to understand that. And it's a huge education for some people because they don't understand or see why I get my paycheck and that's what I get. That's what I make. That's what I take home. But there's all the other benefits that you won't get at some of the other locations. It's the reality of where you work. It is hard. It's easy to compute. I've set it all up and it amazes some people. I mean, I know Gio's like, wow. It's a lot of information, but the city offers a very, very, very heavy benefit package because we know it's hard.
Never valued at what, $12,000 when you add all the benefits together?
15,000. That's what your benefits.
Yeah, because I mean, that's the way we were, and that's what you gotta look at it, because, okay, say for instance, okay, you know what? I'll let you pay your insurance then,
That is
and I'll give you a
Buy
raise.
your own insurance.
And then they're gonna realize I'm not buying a group insurance any longer. I'm buying an individual and see what the cost is. It's gonna be sky high. And,
The city currently covers part of the dependent health insurance. Our employees do not pay full dependent health coverage. The city
Really?
actually pays for
Yeah.
portion
That's
of it.
nice.
We know our employees can't afford $1,000+ a month for their family.
Mhm.
And in reality of it, it doesn't matter what you pay an employee, taking $1,000 a month from them, actually it's about $1,200.
Talk to the school employees.
Yeah, because that's what I
I
paid.
guarantee you she's
I paid
had it.
over $1,000 a month for health insurance, family.
And it's hard, it's rough.
Yeah.
And we already have employees we know that manage paycheck to paycheck. We know the conditions of Alpine, we know the housing market. There's a lot that goes into these decisions and then it is an education. thing.
Food prices,
It's
gas
understanding.
prices, everything's high.
We pay a higher starting rate. Is it where we want it? Maybe not, but it's better than where it was. We provide the holidays, the sick leave, the vacation. We help you with your insurance. Our insurance, the rates went up a little bit, but we're still preventative. We want you to go to the doctor. We provide an HRA card, which because we increased our insurance rates when we went fully funded, we gave each employee a prorated HRA card that gave them $750 to start off with this fiscal year to pay your copay, to pay your prescription, to pay your, Band-Aids, what you needed. The city has done very well with trying to make sure that the employees stay, they're healthy, they're valued, but it's hard because you can only throw so much money at them before they're like, but you don't value me. You want me to do my job, but I don't have the tools to do it. I come to work and I have to come sick because we're shorthanded. So how do I use my sick leave? And it's hard, and it's a balancing act. And the city's done very well with trying to manage it. But at the same time, the city also has to take into consideration how long is it can sustain it. So then do you start making decisions to remove some of the benefits, to cut back on them, to change the pay rates, to be able to provide that extra so they can pay their insurance. Are we required to provide insurance? No. Do we? Yes.
But you would have to grandfather people in if you start taking away. And take from the ones that already have. or you're gonna lose a lot of employees.
Well, no, and that's
Yeah.
why we don't make those choices. But these are things that in the long
I
run
know.
have to be decided.
The county
Our-
has since
yes.
done that, and that's the only reason I can speak from
And-
knowing, because they went, well, we're not gonna do this anymore. Well, hell, then we'll all go home. That's fine.
And, you know, the thing is,
What are they
also,
gonna do?
when I said about,
And you
Then
don't
the-
wanna do that to them.
I said, letting the employee pay their own insurance, how many are actually gonna spend that money?
Well, they won't
Human,
be insured then.
being
That's
human,
what'll happen then.
Yeah.
They
And then-
won't have insurance.
right, and
And
so,
then you're gonna help them, and you're gonna help them, and you're gonna help them. We're all
Yeah.
gonna help them.
and that's,
I'd rather them be employed.
yeah, and that's the thing that you have to explain to them. Guys, how many of you guys are really gonna buy that health insurance? Because
It's hard, and you have employees right now who are waiting to retire so that they can at least apply for Medicaid, Medicare.
Medicare,
Medicare.
Because we don't offer, after you leave, retirement, benefits. And it's hard, and these are all discussions that over time, it's like, yes, we're great to work for, and we want you to come work for, but the city also needs to provide those tools for them to work. And it's hard because it's a balancing act.
How many employees are at the city?
80. Well, let me rephrase that. We currently have around 90 because 94, because you have the post lifeguards.
Okay.
So you have seasonal workers, you
We're
have
not giving them
contract
insurance,
workers.
are we? Just checking.
You have part-time workers, you have full-time workers. You have a wealth of people. That is just an option. I want to move forward with playing with those numbers to understand where we have room for paving materials, heavy equipment changes, other things that are needed to do the jobs. Because this is a huge part of your expenses, it's really the first thing that needs to be addressed. Do we want to go all out? Do we want to take it down a notch? I'll come up with 2 different scenarios. I just wanted it to be very clear that I would like to recommend something a little bit higher to kind of get back on track, but to put, you're gonna get this, but there won't be promotions, there won't be merit raises until we get an actual structure. I think that's fair across the board. It provides visibility to the employees that, okay, I'm gonna get this, but I'm not gonna get these merit raises right off the bat. They will come into play once we develop that pay scale. The last one, our grants. We currently have a grant process. It's a little internal process, kind of a step 1, step 2. I think it would be in the best interest of the city to kind of decide which grants would benefit the city. Do we look for ones that are specifically addressed for roads? Do we look for ones that are specifically addressed for infrastructure? Narrow it down. And the reason why, we want it to fit the community needs, but it's a less free-for-all. So not that I don't like semi-free money, but it puts a lot of pressure on a part-time employee to go after every avenue of a grant. Every department wants every avenue of a grant. You have to manage all of these grants. You have to have proper records. You have to have proper procedures.
She's only part-time?
Yes. You have to
Bless
have
her.
some stipulations here because we currently do have everyone going out for every possible, oh, can you look up this? Can you do this? Can you do that? And that's great. But at the end of the day, are some of the things we're looking for in the best interest of what our needs are currently? I don't know the full understanding of some of our CIPs that are out there because they were done by prior city managers. But I'm looking at it from your survey with what are priorities. You start going through your priorities and knocking them off. You find the additional funding that can support them. And then your priorities start to change. The city's been consistent. If your number 1 priority is paving, why have we not fully addressed the paving? If it's always going to be a priority, then maybe we need to look at things even differently. Your infrastructure, we've all talked about it. Now it's time to take the plunge and, sorry, no pun intended, and fix it. To actually like, okay, we have a problem. We've all talked about it. We know about it. We're putting X amount in the budget to move forward. And it is hard. we have such a wealth of data out there for grants, but do we always need to go for one that may or may not? I don't want
Serve
to,
our needs.
Or be the most
I
beneficial.
don't want to pick on any one department,
Right.
but yes, we want to go for it, but maybe we don't actively go for it 100%. Whereas, you know what, we'll do the application, we'll send it in and see if it bites. Whereas other ones, we put in 75, 85, 90% of our time to go after them. Your CDBG ones, that's your fire hydrant project we just completed. It completed some of the irrigation issues we've had in town. We've been looking at a sidewalk one, which would address your drainage on some of your roads because of the curbing. Things that maybe provide
People have curbs?
not everyone, but yes, some people do.
So
Just asking.
But provides those services, and it's not, oh, we're getting sidewalks. You are, but you're also getting additional irrigation with the water, drainage. It has like a multifaceted to it. You're addressing something that is needed across the board, but at the same time, it's also accomplishing maybe some of your smaller priorities. With roads always being your number one priority, and I'm pretty sure Dr. Ronger can speak back on this years and years before us, we need to address it, and maybe we need to look at it from a different angle. We know that water is an issue. We know that, the weather creates issues. Do we learn a new paving method? Do we change it up? Do we contract with the vendor so we're taking it out at two different angles? We're replacing and repairing. There's just a lot to it. But I'd like Marcy, I won't lie, I'd like myself to know that we're only gonna worry about certain ones so that we put our full attention, we can meet the deadlines. When you're running 21 grants is what we're doing currently, it is hard, no matter how well you do your Google Calendar, to make sure you don't miss something. And we don't want to miss a deadline. We don't want to miss a report. Will it happen? Yes. Has it happened? Yes. We get a slap on the wrist, we feel bad, and we move on, but it also reflects on us down the road. So we are running full speed with the grants. I would just like a little bit more understanding from a council perspective. Anything that involves A, B, and C, we're going after.
Right.
You have other projects that go on within the city. And, very thankful to Dr. Ronger for his donation with the trees. But you have the recreation side, you have your parks, you have the pool, you have other departments, your animal control, who provide services that the city may overlook, but it's balancing out. Okay, paving is our priority, but you know what? Let's have one big community project we complete this year. It may not be, it's the splash pad. Let's just throw that one out there. So we're gonna focus on, but we're gonna get one big community project as well. So you kind of have that, okay, we're gonna go for grants, we're gonna focus on these big projects, but we're gonna grab that one big community one. We do have the Nuevo Pueblo Park currently. But maybe, every year we pick another community-based grant. So you're balancing out both sides. You're doing what needs to be done from an infrastructure and really a priority side, but you're doing I want people to come into my town and say, hey, this is a cute park. Hey, we were driving through, we're hotter than Hades and we stopped at the splash pad. Things that can balance that out. And it will be hard from a budget perspective. But if we at least start trying and put it in there and work with the numbers and see what the outcome is, it may be surprisingly in our best interest. I have 1,000 more thoughts. Like I said, it's numbers. I get excited. Finance is my thing. But I really just wanted to have a conversation, and I really want there to be discussion. I want you guys to throw ideas out to me. Look at what your priorities are. I've got my paper here to make a list. I can pull the departments, literally overnight, get it all into the system to print out a budget. It will not be balanced the first go round. We do not have our tax information yet. I play with last year's revenue sources. That's kind of where we go off with. I just really want more involvement, I guess, because I like to know. I don't want to give you, well, here's Megan's thoughts, because we all have thoughts. I really want to understand, what are your priorities besides paying? And
Well, I want to be able to flush my commode and know that it's not just going into my yard, so put that one at the top. Maybe number 2. Because I'm telling you, until I ran and started getting phone calls, I had not a clue that our wastewater system was in that kind of a turmoil. I mean, it's a turmoil. It's, and to know it is fixable, then why isn't it getting fixed? That's what I'm being asked.
Well, and
So-
everyone has tried. I don't want to discredit anyone. I don't want to call out any one person.
And I'm not saying
Everyone
that, but it sounds to
tries.
me like stuff has been started, and then with a change of something, then, oh, well, let's do it a whole different way. Well, let's don't. Can we not set something in place so it stays in place even if we're not here?
That would be the engineer task orders.
That's my opinion. And give everybody a raise. I've worked some places where we didn't get raise. Y'all are gonna get a 1.2%, just keep it. You know, if you can't even get to 2%, I don't want your 1.2%.
That was to
Keep
make
it.
up the change in the social security rate.
I don't care what it was. It made me madder than happy. You know, I did not feel like I was a valued employee for 1.2%. I mean, it was like $14. Keep your money. If it's, just leave me where I am, and then maybe we can get 2 next year. That's what I'm talking about. So, but I think the employees need a raise. I think we need a wastewater plant. What else have I wrote on here? Generators.
I think you put that on there already.
I think we're all in agreement. I mean, you know, if that's what needs to happen and we have the money, why aren't we doing it? That's my question. Do it.
Just go buy chicks.
There you go.
There's that whole financial side of me. It's like, you don't
want
even
the-
want reserve.
Look, if
now
you're gonna
want
hand me a
spend.
book of numbers, and that's my opinion right there.
They want the budget.
So I know paving is a big one, the wastewater treatment plant. Would you guys prefer me to give you 2 different options with staffing, one at the 5, one at a lower rate? The other side of it is most departments are requesting additional staffing.
Well, it's an either or now. They're not gonna be able to get everything. Right?
Yep.
How much staff is the city down right now? How many employees do you need right now?
6, 8, 9, 10, 11, maybe 12.
Oh, she's on her toes now. When they are hired, are they all hired at well, this one's gonna go into the water, so they start at this rate, and this one's going to the gas, and they start at this rate, and this one's, but can you not do your little thing real quick and let's get them all, everybody across the board right now?
The ladder.
Yes, get it started. I mean, that's an important thing.
So the pay ladder has been started. We're doing the research to better understand comparison with the different, not only departments, but other cities. I mean, we're all competing against
I
each
know,
other.
I know.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts. But also, and you're right, when an employee starts, my understanding, everyone started at $13.50. That's not been the case. There's not the starting and then the advancement, after 90 days, you go to
Right.
14 or something, there's a little, people have come in at different rates and departments are all different. So we want to go back and this is where that employee handbook has to be changed again. I bit the bullet. I invested in software that provides all the state required documentation to build a handbook. And then what we can add in, it helps us formulate, it helps us, it basically will red flag it. It's through SHRM, which is the National HR Society. It allows us to build a better understanding and process. So when an employee starts and they read their handbook, they know that they're starting at this rate, but then they know after 90 days, after a year, after 5 years, after, or maybe they move this way, they move laterally, vertically, it all changes, but they understand that. I would not want to just put numbers out there without having a true understanding. Every department has been treated differently for so long. We need to to sit down and have the conversation, get some samples put together, get the process in place.
Because you do want to also retain the good employees that you do have and that you've already trained.
And we had that issue when we went from whatever we were $10, I think is what we were starting them at, to $13.50. You had those employees who were caught between that weren't, they were moved up to $13.50, but then Joe Blow got hired at $13.50 as well, and I've been here for 3 years. So there was that lag that created people leaving. So we just want to make sure that we look at this the best way possible with the best information and be able to present something, okay, this is the policy that goes with the pay scale. If you get hired, if you get promoted, if you get a merit raise, if you transfer. Transfers affect other people's budgets, and sometimes that's not taken into consideration. We have employees who transfer across the city from a department to a different fund to, different, area. Well, their pay rate affects that person's budget now, and taking those into consideration.
So that was just an issue last year at the county because somebody's pay rate wasn't gonna match and somebody was gonna make less money. And that's what they were told. You transfer into this office, you will lose money. So you're more than welcome to do it.
And that's not always the case, in my opinion. If you have an employee who's invested time, but needs to be relocated for whatever reason.
But then change the whole budget and they had no money anyway. Remember how all of a sudden they
Wait till
didn't have
the
enough
next
money?
part of my meeting.
Uh-oh.
There's a lot.
We
There's a
don't
lot
have any money.
of conversation
I
and
know.
cleanup. And you are correct. Getting that pay scale is important. I can't promise it will be done in the next 3 months.
Well, one thing, from a teacher's perspective,
Because you came out of a set pay scale.
well, not only that, but some districts, if you stayed, well, after 5 years, then you would get a bonus, for staying. All the teachers that were there 5 or more years would get.
And it is something
A bonus.
to retain people.
So we do have longevity. Longevity is after you have to have been here 90 days. It's provided the first pay period of December. No, it is not a Christmas bonus. It's just the
But
timing
it's
of how-
nice.
But it is nice.
Mhm.
It's $4 a month for every month you've been employed.
I think
But
that's
you have
outstanding.
to
yeah.
been here 90 days. And it is nice. You have employees who have proven the longevity, who have
Mhm.
been here. I mean, look at Mr. Galvan, who's retiring effective tomorrow. He's been here 28 years, right? 27. You have Eddie Molinar, who has been here 35, I believe. You have long-term employees, and it's nice to provide these little incentives,
Mhm.
but you want them to also be able to incentivize their staff and to
Right.
keep them.
Right, I agree with that.
What else do you guys have on questions, thoughts?
Just trying to avoid
It's all
look
new.
at numbers.
So I'm the number side. I've always,
I don't want
I
it.
put the numbers in, they're given to me, I put them in, and then that's my sole purpose with finance side. So it's kind of nice to be able to, okay, I can play around with things and see what would benefit each department and the city as a whole.
And see, I don't agree on, if there's 4,000 grants, let's apply for 2,000 of them. I don't agree with
I
that.
don't agree. I
Because
think we need to
then you're getting
prioritize.
You gotta
stuff
pay back.
that you would have to put toward color books to hand out on Thursday. I don't like that. I mean, you're never gonna need it. Only apply for what you need. That's my opinion.
And that's where working back with departments and council as a whole is understanding these are the needs, this is what we apply for.
Because if you have too many grants out there and you don't finish those
21
projects,
is a lot of
That's a lot
grants.
of grants.
That is a full-time job
Then
and a
what
half for
happens?
somebody. That's way too many. If they're not usable. If there's 20 of them that are going to our water waste treatment plant, yeah, absolutely.
That's okay.
But they're not, and they can't be put toward it. So we're not focusing on what we need.
There's one item that is not part of the presentation and discussion.
Oh, God.
It's a sensitive item, and everyone is very well aware of the CARES. The current one is the American Rescue Plan Act. The city is in receipt of $1.3 million to be utilized based off of the federal guidelines. The Texas Department of Emergency Management has basically accepted the money on the city's behalf. They will deposit it in two disbursements. We're required to report our what we've used the money for to the US Treasury.
What can we use it for?
So it's very specific.
I'm
We've
sure.
already used part of it, by the way.
That's
So part of it's being utilized for the Sunshine House and the remodel to provide a level of separation because we are too close.
okay.
We're managing that as best we can. We're overwhelmed up there.
Mhm.
It's also very hard for an employee to do their job when you can hear everything that's going on around you. I'm horrible. I'm a distraction, so I hear everything. The other part, and this was brought up to my attention during a discussion with the utility department, is that they were promised the money, or said that they could use it for one of their projects. I had to burst their bubble and be like, well, that's interesting because I've already spent part of it, literally. I do think that the majority of that needs to go to your infrastructure and your wastewater plant. It is a secure investment. It is covered by what is allotted and allowed by the US Treasury.
And they'll let us spend it out there?
They'll let us spend it out there. It's to help improve infrastructure. The original purpose, I believe, was for smart meters, which is another valuable asset for the city. You have one meter reader that if he decides to leave, we will be in a little bit of a tight spot. But your wastewater plant is the bigger issue. It will be dispersed partly this year and partly next year. It's just a random amount they're going to give us, and then we are required to report to the US Treasury. The reason why I bring this up, the US Treasury, of course, is a federal entity. They are very, very specific. They will come after you for 3 cents. They will not back down. Everything has to be done correctly. It has to be documented correctly. It has to be procured correctly.
That's why you're our interim city manager. You just go right ahead and take care of that for us, Megan. Thanks.
So you have
Thanks, Megan.
you have a lot of outside sort vendors, people who are like, oh, well, we could use that money. Oh, we can use that money. I'm not asking you to use it specifically for what I'm requesting. I'm hoping you will, because that is a huge issue.
Right.
I will provide additional documentation and provide that, okay, this is why, this is how, this is the resource we can have. The other reason why I bring this up is that we will have some changes that will need to be made. When we receive more than $750,000 in any type of outside funding, whether state or federal, we have to be single audited. Those are my favorite time of years. Audits are from a finance perspective, is our report cards. Mayor, you know, Ron, you probably remember, that's my report card that tells the city and the citizens and my own department that, hey, we're doing a good job. We will have management points because there's always rooms to improve, always. We're not worried about that. We just don't want there to be findings. When there is a finding, it does affect your grant fund. So we're trying to eliminate those issues. I bring that up because that is an additional expense that has to be considered when budgeting. So we currently budget so much, we will have to look at amending not only our current budget, but how we want to address it for the next year. It's a huge undertaking that auditors do take because they go through every little thing. We're really good at providing them everything they need, but we have that those moments where like, I have no idea what they're talking about. And it becomes a little bit of a harder task for them. So that's something else that needs to be taken into consideration. Over the next several years, we will have to be single audited, which means our audits also go to the Federal Clearinghouse, which means they're very open to anyone to
When
see.
was the last one done?
Last year, not this fiscal year that we just finished, but the year
But the
before.
last, right. And that's the one we have a copy of.
That would be the current one.
Okay.
So it was the year before. We really, really try to go for those clean audits. We had the one finding the prior year, which I'm excited. We had way too much money and we didn't have it
That's
properly
horrible.
collateralized. But and those are things that we have to monitor, is making sure that our checking accounts don't exceed what we're allotted. So those are things that also put on your radar. So there are little pots of money that are coming in, but these aren't continued revenue sources. These are one-time deals. If the city properly allocates them to complete your priorities and your big projects, then you're not worried about, okay, we've got to budget so much every year. We have to go out for additional debt. We're taking what's being provided to us currently and investing it correctly. So 1.3 million, guys. Any other questions? Man, I can talk apparently.
Yes, you can.
This is what it feels I'm excited about. So I will definitely put the numbers together and I probably will provide different copies of the budget, one with certain priorities, one without.
Okay.
It will be available for the public before the next meeting.
It will be on the website or?
It will go up on the website. It will be a draft version. It will not be proposed. It's gonna be just a draft. We are a few steps behind. This usually starts a little bit sooner, but you know, we've all been trying to handle some cleanup and some issues, so I do apologize. I can only work late so many days, guys.
I understand that.
So, but we all are excited. Gio's been grateful, my team has been grateful. So we'll get some numbers put together. The format will look a little bit different. We are gonna have a cover page for the departments to show you their accomplishments and what their priorities are and what they're requesting. They've done a lot of work, so I don't wanna not give them the credit. I'm kind of the mean one who comes back through and cuts it. You know, sorry, you know, we've gotta balance. And that is the big thing, is at the end of the day, we have to pass a balanced budget. That is required. So there are multiple ways to balance it. It's just kind of making sure we have the means to do it. So I don't like to do it on paper if I don't have the actual cash or understanding of how to back that up, just so you're aware. So if you tell me to pull it out of reserves or fund balance, I'm gonna tell you, you don't have it or you do. So, lots of options. Any questions you guys have or things you think of in the next week or so, please don't hesitate to contact so we can throw that in there. And I think all of your departments are excited. We will start having department meetings with the budget side of it a little bit later on. Right now, I'm trying to get the forefront going before we make too many big changes.
Okay, that it? 5:30, then we'll see everybody back. Meeting's adjourned.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Span.